When I first heard of Vinland Saga, I thought, man, another garbage fest of punching, kicking, gore, violence, unrealistic sequences, and trashy visuals. So I grabbed my popcorn, sat on the bed, and having nothing else to do but contemplate how people thought Subaru's speech was actually good. It was absolute fucking dogshit, by the way, and sorry if you thought this was a place where I didn't trash your favorite characters and anime, but welcome anyway. I decided to watch Vinland Saga. Who the fuck made this absolute fucking masterpiece? The story started off kinda normal. There's Thorfinn, a kid who knows nothing about the world and wants to become a warrior. Viking anime Jesus, his dad, who despite having equal screen time to 1010, is arguably the most important character in the entire series. They have a family and they live in Iceland, doing normal things until his dad gets butchered by a bunch of pirates / Vikings / retards who pretend to be tough when they're fighting weaker guys, but get fucked in the ass when they meet a real challenge. Right, Thorkel? Thorfinn witnesses this and, let's be honest, is the primary cause of his dad's death, who was destroying Askeladd's group with his bare, bloody hands. Yeah, Askeladd's the boss, and Thorfinn joins their group to fight him and kill him in a fair duel, so his dad's killer becomes his stepdad / guardian / enemy / mentor. I don't know. The point is, he's a tough old man with a sad backstory who sometimes likes and sometimes hates, but mostly enjoys Thorfinn's behavior. Everything needs to be put into context. This world is insanely brutal and horrifyingly bloody. Not the same torture / horror of Elfenlied or creepy bloody like another. It's a world of chaos, war, violence, strength, and instability. You don't know when your village will be attacked and pillaged. You don't know if your babies will die before they turn 2, and you don't know if you'll be slaughtered tomorrow. Kings are waging wars and being assassinated at every single turn. The environment is harsh and painful. Compassion is a privilege for the select few, and power and dominance are the laws of the land. Basically, it's a realistic recreation of most of human history. This is what our society has looked like for most of humanity's existence. Hell, the bloodiest war in human history happened less than 100 years ago, and even today wars are raging all around the place. It's easy to sit in a peaceful area and forget how brutal the world is, so sometimes the best thing to do is, who the fuck is this monster? Thorfinn, through every fault of his own, ends up in hell, and whilst displaying more skill than Gordon Ramsay with a knife, is forced to transform into an absolute badass. Normally, I would be glazing the shaft all the way to the base and grabbing it with both hands, but the problem is, this is just fucking tragic. He didn't just become tough because he wanted to save the world and become the hero. He was forced to by his environment and the violence and the gore surrounding him. Thorfinn's not a tragic hero at this stage. He's not even a hero really. He's a kid who forcefully became a beast through war. He's not a good guy either. Tragedy might make us feel bad for him, sure, but he's done so many things where if you didn't know his backstory, you'd think of him as a villain in any other story. The raiding, pillaging, burning, destroying, and killing are all things he's actively participated in. Sure, it was to duel Askeladd, but every person that's doing that has a reason for doing it. Some of them want money and goods. Some want to become warriors in their own hometowns. Some want to provide for their families, and some think it's better to do it to others than to have it happen to them. The point I'm making is that no one's truly a bad guy except for a select few, and everyone's a product of their circumstances. The priest was right all along then. Even in the midst of all his bad deeds though, Thorfinn showed genuine compassion and a desire for justice, like when he told the slave girl to kill her master and about the paradise called Vinland, and when he looked at the mum who protected him, whereafter he burned down her village. That look was Thorfinn basically saying, this is just how the world works, we have to move along with it or die. I'm going to get back to Thorfinn and how his philosophy changes over the course of the show, but you can't talk about Vinland Saga and skip over this thundercock Chad of a Viking, Thorkel. This motherfucker is just built different. He is what I think of when I think of Vikings. There's nothing philosophical or deep here. He's just the ultra giga Chad who loves war, fighting, and chaos. Sometimes he reminds me of a younger Robert Baratheon, and seeing a guy who's clearly built for this world is a bit of a relief. Like, we've seen lots of pillaging and violence and conquest by the time this lad shows up, and seeing weak people get battered is kind of soul crushing, but seeing this guy who gets his fingers cut off and goes, fucking right mate, that's how we do it, can make even the straightest man turn into Homo Street. He is in control of everything around him and relishes in the violence. Seeing that makes me happy, like seeing a lion being thrown into a cage full of TikTokers. The best thing about him isn't even the charisma or superhuman size and strength, or just how happy he is in the world he's born in. It's his goddamn Chad honor. He seems like someone who would crush your head and have a beer, and to be fair, he would kind of fucking do that. But he won't crush your head until he gives you a chance to fight him, and will accept loss like a man. He'll show respect to you if you've got balls, even if you can't fuck him up, but will spread your cheeks and take you from behind if you show weakness and give up in front of him. If the mountain was a cool guy, it would be Thorkill. I really wish I could have had a beer with him myself. If you watch Vinland Saga and don't come away from it having a complicated relationship with Askeladd, you watched the wrong show. After killing Thors in a 300v1, plus whilst taking hostages, showing as much honor and respect as a player on COD, he keeps Thorfinn around because he's interesting, not because he actually gives a fuck about him. Some tried to tell me that he did care about him at the start, but if you look carefully, he had no problems letting him die if Thorfinn couldn't hold out on his own. He also keeps him around because he's more useful than all of his own blokes combined, and more loyal, as we found out when they tried to ditch Askeladd when they were about to die. But in a strange, toxic, R-rated Looney Tunes way, Askeladd becomes a mentor to Thorfinn, teaching him about the ways of the world, showing him the importance of power for survival. I like to think that he did that as almost a tribute to Thors, who he knew was the greatest warrior he ever met, and by the end, he even tells Thorfinn to stop chasing him like a yandere retard and to go live his own life. This obviously doesn't excuse anything he's done, no chance in hell, especially when you look at what happened to the villagers, which by the way, was one of the most horrifying, chilling, and realistic scenes in the entire show. Askeladd is definitely not an anti-hero or antagonist in the traditional sense, but he absolutely is a villain. Again though, when we look at his background, I wonder if we would have done things differently in his position, and I'm actually impressed at how far he got in life after being a random kid whose mom took back shots from the king. He tried to take care of his mom and be good, but circumstances forced him to become brutal and ruthless to survive. I don't want to sound like I'm writing an English essay for school, like the author's intention was to display the veracity of insidious handjobs characterized by recourse to your mother's cheeks, but the consistent and prevalent theme really is that this show doesn't have classic good guys and bad guys. Everyone's a product of their own exceptional circumstances. He doesn't leave Thorfinn after he dies either, being a mentor in his mind, which kinda shows that whilst Thorfinn still wanted to kill him, his death actually meant the loss of his only goal in life. And when we think back, Askeladd could have actually killed him whenever the hell he wanted. I know that not killing a kid isn't exactly the moral trophy winner, but think about the world we are in. Askeladd has no problem killing other children, including babies, when it suited him, so actually for him, it is kind of a big deal. While Thorfinn obviously didn't want to suck off the guy that killed his dad, I think his honest opinion about Askeladd could be summed up by the phrase, he hated him but was grateful, and he hated how he felt any gratitude at all. Shakespeare should plagiarize these verses instead of Romeo and Juliet. What a dogshit story. I have no enemies. Don't lie, you've probably seen that everywhere, from Insta Reels to Twitter memes to edgelords making that their wallpaper to trashy YouTubers like me using it as their thumbnail with a stupid face in the corner pretending to be shocked like, I can't believe he said what we all knew he was going to say. Thorfinn's transformation would put Jake Pauls to absolute shame. Before Thors died, he explained to Thorfinn that war, violence, fighting, revenge, and all of these ideas that rule the world today are wrong, unintentionally referencing the greatest library of books ever written, the Holy Bible. After his goal is removed, Thorfinn is a ghost, walking around with no purpose or aim and trying to figure out what it means to be a true warrior. By meeting ghosts from his past, meeting interesting and tragic characters, being involved in several epic combat sequences with overpowered warriors, and letting go of all of his anger and hate, we see one of the most incredible scenes in anime history. This scene symbolizes who Thorfinn is now, a capable fighter who chooses not to engage in expansionary violence and will avoid taking people's lives. To everyone living in the world today, this is absolutely self-explanatory, but in a world as brutal as Vinland Saga, this is not only revolutionary, but by some people's standards, mentally retarded. I mean, that's exactly what the people around him are gonna think, especially when they're all warriors, soldiers, and in a world as brutal as this. But despite how ridiculous his ideas seem, he convinces the prince and the other fighters that this is the way forward. gaining respect by also taking 100 punches like an absolute Chad, overtaking Thorkill and basically every single other character in anime and TV show history in terms of toughness. This is what a JoJo fan thinks he is, but this is what he actually is, the fucking homo. Most people dropped the show after season 1, mostly because they knew they weren't going to get a lot of action. But if that doesn't stop them from chasing bitches in real life, why does it make them drop a show? No, but really, I understand their motivation. When you're introduced to war and violence and get hooked on that, taking a turn towards peace and philosophy is a little bit jarring. But these people missed how extraordinary this show became, the teachings we got from it. The build up of season 1 wasn't for some highly anticipated war. It was for a transformation of philosophy and mindset. The last thing Thor's taught Thorfinn finally sank in and made this protagonist one of the best written characters ever made. His story and the story of many other characters is filled with tragedy, loss, war, growth, and ultimately redemption. This story reminds us of how brutal life was before the modern era and the extraordinary things we did and learned as human beings through the ages that led to the world we created today. It wasn't made out of thin air. It took centuries and centuries of conversation and war to come to what we have today. History is the name of the process of transformation and events that took place before the present, and we have developed incredible mediums to gain an insight on what it was like at every point of the past. That is the story of Vinland Saga. Till next time.